Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss what the latest talks between Starmer and Biden in the United States yesterday mean for the dynamic of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Putin is doing his nuts and claiming that allowing cruise missiles to target military assets in Russia would amount to a war against all NATO countries. In reality, it doesn't on any level. But given that Putin has threatened nuclear escalation so many times if certain lines have been crossed, and then not done so when those lines have been crossed, why is he so desperate now that he risks looking impotent yet again? Because let's consider what we know, or at least suspect, about the decisions yesterday, because neither the American nor British governments have made any formal announcement of what's been decided in terms of the use of storm shadows against Russian targets. So we don't know the details for certain. But here's what we do know. So first of all, Biden has said he doesn't think much of Putin's constant hints at nuclear escalation, and that he does not think that Ukraine hitting targets in Russia amounts to a war between NATO and Russia. In other words, if the US has been hesitant to be too direct in its support for Ukraine so far for fear of triggering a nuclear war by mistake, then this fear appears to have subsided a little. Not enough to just join Ukraine on the battlefield and kick Russia out like we did to protect Kuwait during the first Gulf War, but perhaps enough to at least let Ukraine be more aggressive in defending itself. I imagine there's also a fear for the consequences should Trump win the presidency this year. Making sure Ukraine has as much support from the US as possible before next January could be crucial just in case. The UK, along with France, is of course supplying Storm Shadow cruise missiles to Ukraine, and up until now, of course, for use against Russian targets inside Ukraine. Now, the UK government, at least, I'm pretty sure France as well, but certainly the UK government is up for allowing Zelensky to use them against military targets in Russia that are being used to attack Ukraine. In the interests of NATO unity, however, America has very much been taking the lead on this, so there's been no moves that the US president hasn't signed off on. And it's America that's been very cautious on the use of explicit support like this so far. But the mood music that you're getting from reports on what various important figures in America have been saying yesterday is it's likely that Biden has agreed that we can tell Ukraine it can use storm shadows against those targets in Russia. America won't allow its own cruise missiles to be used in this way, however. So what is the potential problem for Putin here? Now, the obvious one is if Ukraine is able to take out anything which has been used to hit targets in Ukraine from inside the Russian border, then Putin's capacity to strike civilian targets from the safety of his own country is greatly diminished. But it would do something else as well. If Ukraine is able to hit, for example, airfields used to launch air attacks on Ukrainian towns, it would show that Russia is unable to defend its own military bases, which opens up a whole can of worms. Ukraine has already successfully launched drone attacks on Russian airfields, but the damage done was only superficial. It was more of a statement of intent rather than anything of serious military consequence. But a cruise missile does a lot of damage. Not only could it take out a lot of expensive Russian hardware, it's not that quick or easy to replace, but expose Putin as unable to manage air defences in Russia. But worse than that. So we all know why Putin is invading Ukraine. Ukraine was aligning itself with Europe rather than Mother Russia, and Putin needed its resources to feed his oligarch support base, given that they've already stripped Russia bare. However, this is not what he says his motives are. He doesn't claim to be a pirate king. He claims it's a defensive action to protect Russia against NATO aggression, even though his war has now actually bolstered NATO's presence on his western border considerably. So imagine you're a Russian citizen and you believe this. You believe that there's this nefarious plot by the West to invade Russia, and they're using Ukraine as their Trojan horse. You see the news of cruise missiles attacks on Russian military installations. These cruise missiles are fired by Ukraine, but supplied by the UK with authorization from the United States. Well, if you believe that NATO wants to invade Russia, you're going to see this as a sign of the beginning of that invasion, aren't you? And now you're seeing that Putin cannot even defend his military bases because they're hitting their targets. So what happens when those cruise missiles target Russian towns and cities? Now, of course, this isn't going to happen, but those Russian citizens falling for Putin's propaganda think it will. After all, they've been bombing the crap out of Ukrainian towns and cities. Why wouldn't Ukraine do the same to them? And if the Russian military can't even defend itself from these attacks, certainly can't defend civilian populations. This, I suspect, is why Putin is utterly desperate here. Because neither Starmer nor Biden have said what they've agreed, I guess the first we'll see of a change of policy is when a storm shadow hits something inside Russia. Romania is currently training Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16s. That's going to boost Ukraine's air capacity at the same time as it may be beginning to take out military installations in Russia that are being used to target civilian populations in Ukraine. Now, I'm assuming that the conditions will be that Zelensky can only target inside Russia on the basis of directly defending Ukraine. I'm assuming he won't have permission to take out military targets, for example, with the intention to capture and hold more Russian territory. Although, without a formal announcement of any new terms, we can't know for sure. And I suppose the reason for no formal announcement is to keep either Putin or the Russian people guessing about exactly what Zelensky can do with these cruise missiles. But if Ukraine is successful in taking out Russia's ability to launch attacks into Ukraine from inside Russia itself, and Ukraine's air force is bolstered as well, it will make Putin look very weak. And if Russians believe that Ukraine is gearing up to be like NATO's proxy in an invasion, then how can they not think that Putin is simply not strong enough to defend Russia? Which will be why he's given his most explicit warnings yet of the consequences of crossing this particular red line. But it also sounds like it's another impotent threat, which is not being taken terribly seriously. After all, if Russia's air defences are not good enough to protect military bases against cruise missiles, really don't want to trigger a nuclear war, do they? Assuming they're even capable of launching any nuclear-armed ballistic missiles, which on the evidence of the Russian military in Ukraine is highly questionable. Putin has built his reputation on being some sort of strongman. This may not be how he's seen as the campaign progresses next year. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.